Today we are taking a look at all the different tank classes in War Thunder, and I will be approaching it from worst to best. That doesn't mean that in the worst classes there can't be vehicles that are incredibly good and that you should always ignore the lowest ranked ones. No. But this guide might help you decide the composition of your lineup and what to spawn next during a battle. Starting with the worst class in War Thunder, the Tank Destroyers. Tank Destroyers in the lower battle ratings are usually casemates or weird vehicles that fit no other class. This includes all of the artillery pieces in War Thunder. Most Tank Destroyers you'll find in War Thunder do not have a 360-degree rotating turret, average to poor mobility and exceptional firepower. Their armor can vary from no armor like the ZIS-30 to what is essentially a rolling fortress like the T-95. They possess a slightly lower spawn point cost than light and medium tanks, but most Tank Destroyers only fit a very specific playstyle, making their performance more dependent on the map you land on. My favorite one definitely has to be the Jagdpanther, simply because there's nothing more fun than sitting on a hill and people constantly bouncing on your stupidly angled front plate. Next one up are the anti-tank missile carriers, which share their spawn point pool and icon with Tank Destroyers. These tanks are usually poorly armored and slow. To offset this weakness, they're usually equipped with a missile that has no problem penetrating everything they face, even in up tiers. Like Tank Destroyers, they are very dependent on a map that contributes positively to their playstyle. If you want to try this class, you should definitely give the PVV 302 a try. Its Bill missile is basically a comically large version of a TOW-2B, which means it has top attack capabilities. The next ranking might be a bit controversial, but let me explain. The third worst type of tanks are the heavy tanks, and there are several reasons for this. Heavy tanks usually feature good armor and a good gun, but oftentimes at the cost of mobility, reload rate and turret traverse speed. This leads to them performing pretty exceptionally in down tiers and even quite well at their own battle rating, but given that up tiers in War Thunder are almost constant, you will find that the armor is usually made irrelevant by the better cannons you face from higher ranked tanks. Along with your cannon being average at best in up tiers and you're missing mobility, you become basically a sitting duck. To add insult to injury, heavy tanks also have the highest spawn point cost of all the vehicles in this list. The most famous example of a heavy tank is probably the Mouse, but I have a different favorite. The American T-14 is very fun to bully Panzer IV with. Before we continue, what are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with my rankings so far? Let me know in the comments. Finally, we are approaching the tanks that I would actually consider the staple of every good ground lineup. Next up, we have medium tanks. Medium tanks are your jack of all trades. They are average at everything and exceed at nothing. They are your bread and butter for performing well in matches. Their armor is usually good in down tiers and enough at their own battle rating. And in up tiers, they suffer less than the aforementioned heavy tanks due to their superior mobility, which lets you perform flanking maneuvers to overcome stronger foes. In terms of spawn cost, they sit right between Tank Destroyers and heavy tanks and share this spot with light tanks. My favorite is probably the Japanese Chi-Nu 2, which can be very fun because of its incredibly good gun and decent turret traverse paired with not too shabby mobility. The next spot is the second best tank class. Of course, I'm talking about SPAs. Surprised that SPAs are this high on the list? Let me explain. Ground W is usually won by the team who can respawn the most amount of times, and the most expensive assets you can use in Ground W are aircraft. Destroying those gives you a massive advantage over the enemy team. Not only are you basically milking their spawn point pool, but you're also doing so in the cheapest vehicle possible, because SPAs have the lowest spawn cost of any vehicle in Ground W. This allows you to get back into the game when your spawn points are too low to spawn a real tank. On top of that, many SPAs can also destroy tanks if you play your cards right. This makes them a really good overall choice that should never be missing in your lineups. I personally really love the Ostwind 2 as a solid choice for mid tiers, and of course nothing can beat a Panzer at top tier. It is hands down the strongest SPA by a long shot. Congratulations on making it this far. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, why not take the next step? Subscribe to my channel for more great content and join my amazing community on Discord. Link can be found in the video description. And that probably no surprise to anyone, we have light tanks on the #1 spot. They share their spawn point costs with medium tanks, but have several very clear advantages. First of all, mobility will always be important, no matter if you're in a down tier or up tier. And it allows you to flank enemies, which can boost your performance a lot because of not having to face better tanks frontally. On top of that, light tanks can spot enemies, which can be important to keep track of enemies behind cover, but also makes them a prime target for every nearby friendly, especially close air support. To top it all off, spotting not only gives you spawn points, but it also reduces the spawn cost of aircraft. It is overall possibly the strongest ability in the game, but that's not where the advantages end. In higher battle ratings, light tanks get access to scout drones, which you can use to spot enemies without having to leave cover and without them knowing where you are. At rank 7, those even have thermals to make it easier. My favorite light tank at lower tiers has to be the Puma, with its incredible mobility, smoke launchers and a fast reload for a decent gun. At higher tiers I really enjoy a lot of the infantry fighting vehicles, but my favorite has to be the Centauro 120 in the Italian tech tree. At top tier the roads can change because modern MBTs are usually classed as medium tanks and the performance gap between mediums and lights is mostly closed. Given that many MBTs possess very good mobility paired with the strongest guns and good armor, in this specific case the mediums switch to first place and the lights to third place, and as a German I'm legally obligated to say that the Leopard 2A7 is my favorite MBT, although I also really enjoy playing the Chinese ZTZ-99A. Now that we've ranked all the tank classes, is there anything you disagree with, or are there any other War Thunder topics you want me to take a look at? Let me know in the comments and see you next time.